Good evening, Answers Now family and folks. Hopefully this works. I just put it in my headset after I tested it out, so hopefully we're getting pretty good audio. We are here on Wednesday evening to do our ongoing series on teaching parents and caregivers how to think like a behavior analyst, how to know all this stuff, because we hear it all the time. Actually, let me finish my intro. I'm Adam Dreyfus. I'm the Chief Science Officer of AnswersNow. What is AnswersNow? It is a downloadable app and a website. So you can go to either your Apple Store or your Android Store and download AnswersNow onto your phone. Or you can go to getanswersnow.com and interact that way. So we'll be going back and forth with that a little bit. We got a new offering. We used to, or not used to, we just started doing one-time video calls. So say you don't want to sign up, you don't want to do the whole thing, you don't want to get assigned to somebody, you just have a question or you want to have a quick little conversation. So you can sign up. You can go and sign in for a 30-minute call and talk to a behavior analyst, and then Bob's your uncle. You're all done. So go to getanswersnow.com, check that out. I'm here to answer whatever questions you might have. I'm going to be talking about discrete trial training. This is probably one of the most common ways that people interact with applied behavior analysis is that they see somebody doing discrete trial training, or if you've got a child or a relative on the spectrum and you hire someone to come into your house or go to a clinic, they mostly do discrete trial training. A lot of people confuse discrete trial training with ABA because it's so common, and some people, a lot of people, that's their only experience of it. So we're going to talk about that a little bit. But I'm also, here you go, you got a BCBA sitting here, and you can ask any questions that you want. We'd like it when you interact, so if you use the little heart things, oh hey, I like that, or little frowny faces, I don't like that, or Adam needs to get a haircut. This is true. I've been kind of getting away with it in the pandemic, and then I do these things, I'm like, this is getting a little woolly. I think I'm gonna let my kids shave my head. That should be one of those challenges. So we are here to talk about all things Answers Now, answer your questions, say hello, and go from there. So one of the things we're doing, we're in our 4th installment of the Parent Support University. So I hear 2 things from parents most of the time. One is, I wish I knew all the stuff that you know. And that's way easier done than said. All that information's out there. It's not, yes, I went to school for it, but tons of places have put it out there for free, so you can learn all the stuff that the BCBAs know. They also say, I just don't want to be the therapist. Right? I don't want to be the therapist. It's too hard for me to be the therapist for my own kid. And what Answers Now is all about is like, hey, listen, we're not going to ask you to be a therapist. If your kid needs in-home support or a special school, like absolutely do that. This is not a substitute for any of those things. But we can help you with the parenting part of it. Because a lot of the struggles that parents have are not like, oh, he doesn't know his numbers. It's he won't play with his siblings, or we had somebody who we're working with now who tickles, right? You think, well, that's not a very big deal. You'd be surprised at how many clients that I've had who are like, listen, my kid won't stop tickling me. It's driving me crazy, and I've tried everything. Very straightforward kind of proposition there. Each kid is individual, so it doesn't mean they're all doing it for the same reason, but it's a pretty straightforward behavior to kind of handle, the tickling. It sounds like it might be kind of funny. It is not funny if you've got a 4 or 5-year-old who won't stop tickling you no matter what you are trying to do. So my favorite sort of, I like to say that what Answers Now does is, we have a parent, and then we have this great big body of knowledge that can largely solve most of their problems. And they just don't access it, right? They hire experts, or maybe they read a book. It's just too much. It's the barrier of entry is too high. It's a lot of weird words like tact, demand, and reinforcement and punishment, all kinds of high barrier of entry. So this is what we're all about, is lowering that barrier of entry, making it much more accessible. So the National Professional Development Center, about 7 or 8 years ago, put together a website that has all of the practices that we know work. evidence-based practices. I think there's 22, maybe a couple more. They're still adding on to it because there's another thing that we are very used to with autism and the parents and the caregivers. They're like, man, every time I turn on my computer, there's like some new intervention, there's some new cure, there's some new book, there's some new something. And so what the National Professional Development Center did is they basically just said, hey, listen, what do we know now? Just works now. We're not going to go round and round about it. So what we're doing here with our Parent Support University is unpacking all of those evidence-based practices. So we've done antecedent-based intervention, cognitive behavioral intervention, differential reinforcement, and now we're on number 4, discrete trial training, DTT as it is usually called. If you are a parent of a child on the spectrum or have been around it, you have seen this. This is most of what this looks like is the kid sitting at a table with an instructor or a teacher, and they're just doing kind of one thing at a time. Discrete means not discreet like, ooh, I'm being discreet because I'm wearing a shirt. Discrete means very clear boundaries. Discrete with the ETE, not the EET. So a discrete trial means that what you're doing is you're trying to reduce the instructional moment to its smallest possible components. So you're trying to break it down because if there's one thing that we've learned about kids on the spectrum and adults on the spectrum is they don't just learn putting them in a classroom. And they don't learn like most of the other kids do in the sense of most of our learning is through observation. So what discrete trial says, hey, I'm going to break this down. So here's a perfect example. I got a pen. I'm not going to sit up here and say, oh, hey, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to be talking to you guys about a pen today. Pens are used for writing. Pens can be ink pens or whatever. Too much talking, right? For most of the kids on the spectrum, they're not going to be able to pull out of all that I'm talking about this. And so a discrete trial, I'll show you an example of one where if I wanted to teach them how to say this just by seeing it. So that's generically kind of called a label. We call it a tact, which is one of those crazy words that we talk about. So I would just hold it up and I wouldn't say anything, right? I would just make sure I got the kid's attention, hold up. And what I want them to say is pen, right? I just want them to say the word pen. So, and they say duck. I'm like, pen. Now, let's do it the way they get it right. Pen. Oh, that's right, it's pen. And here's a little squeeze on the head or whatever that kid finds reinforcing. So you're trying to, the key to it, and it's, what I want you to generalize out of this is if you're trying to have an instructional moment with somebody on the spectrum, stop talking so much. All you need to do is have their attention. And you can usually get that just by walking into their field of view. I do, when I'm working with somebody for a while, I like what I call sort of a naturally occurring way to get somebody's attention instead of doing whatever else you're going to do. I teach these kids that when I do an intake of breath, like, it means I'm about to talk. It means I'm about to do something, and they learn that means like, oh, I need to pay attention to him. He's about to do something, and when he's doing something, that's really good for me, right? It's really important to kind of make learning fun. I say all the time, like, if your kid doesn't want to do discrete trial, it's being done wrong. Why? Because they're in an environment where they're getting tons of attention from somebody. If it's done right, it's really reinforcing. So they're getting lots of stuff that they like. And it could be that they just want to be with the teacher. But usually there's something else. They've got, like, maybe they want to be on the iPad. Maybe they want a snack. Maybe they want something to drink. Maybe they want to play with a toy. So they get access to all these fun things. And if you're doing it right, like I said, it's at a very high level of getting things kind of right. I remember I had one of the teachers, I run a large school, and they said, when we take out the program book, which is where we kind of take all the data, and it's the signal to the kids like, hey, instruction's going to happen. It's going to happen over here. They get really upset. I'm like, well, that is the absolute wrong thing that should happen. What should happen is you sit down and you pull out your materials and the kid comes running over, because this is going to be awesome. They're going to learn some stuff. They're going to get a lot of reinforcement. They're going to get to hang out with somebody they want to hang out with. If those pieces are not in place, it is not going to go very well. So your discrete trial is just this, you want to break whatever you're trying to teach them into the smallest possible component, and not use a bunch of language, even their own name, right? Like if I say David pen, he's going to learn that as this is a David pen, right? Does that make sense? I hope so. That you want to strip out as much language as possible and only use the words that you want to use. The other key to really good discrete trial is you want the difference between a correct answer and an incorrect answer to be big. So if I say, I'm going to ask the question, what is this pen? Hey, that's right, it is a pen. That's good. I'm glad you got that. Or I go, what is this? And they say duck, and I'm like, well, no, it's not a duck, it's a pen. But that was a good try, right? Like you were pretty close, and we're just going to keep trying. That feels very similar. So it's hard for the student, child, client, whatever you want to call them, to experience the difference between a right answer and a wrong answer, because they both kind of sound the same. So the next time I hold this thing up, they're like, I'm not sure exactly. I don't know. Like I did something, let me try something else. So you want the difference between a correct answer. I call it make it rain or nothing happens. So if they get a correct answer, what is this? Pen? Yeah, that's a pen. Boom, high five. Here's a little something you really like. Oh, that's awesome. It's great. What is this? Duck. What is this? Pen. And that's it. Right? You just repeat back the first part of it. You give them the correct answer, and then you move on. No good jobs, no nice. You're not being mean to them, but what you're trying to do is create this big difference so that the next time they see a pen, it increases the chance that they're going to get it right. So here we are deconstructing discrete trial. So we're about halfway through. Just want to reiterate, I am Adam Dreyfus, the Chief Science Officer of AnswersNow. You can find out more about us at getanswersnow.com or download us off of your own app store. We have an Android app and an Apple app. And what we do is we connect you directly to your own clinician. So I'm doing one of these things. I might answer your question a little bit. A good way of thinking about that is you've got the first ingredient for a big dinner. But it takes a lot more than that. You're not just going to figure out how to cook a big old meal in 10 seconds or even half an hour. This is going to take a while. And one of the reasons that we created AnswersNow was so that you could form and build a relationship with a clinician over time. Not just 2 months, but 6 months, a few years. And some folks are like, oh, yeah, that's great, but I've got an in-home. Well, there's a lot of turnover in-home. Nothing against in-home. I did it for a long time. It's great. It's if you can have it available to you, I highly recommend you getting in-home supports. But those of you who do have in-homes know, like, there's a fair amount of turnover. Your line staff turnover quite a bit. The BCBAs might turn over. And what AnswersNow affords you is a longitudinal relationship. Just like you like one with your doctor. You go in and you've had your same doctor for 4 or 5 years. He knows your history. He knows what you've gone through. He knows that what's worked, what hasn't worked, or frankly, more these days, probably she. So that's our kind of core proposition. We also have a bunch of other stuff on the website. We've got communities that are kind of like these open free groups where parents can come in and get questions answered and talk to each other. We've got goals where they're kind of like little paint by numbers is the best way. Is we just they're automatic and you can track your own progress, and they walk you through how to do some of the things that are challenging for some of our families. And we're always open for what is it that you need. What kind of support do you need? Is it around a specific goal? Is it to have a sense of community? Is it to not feel so isolated? Is it different people have different reasons that they come to us? Our basic premise is that the parent or the caregiver is kind of like a CEO, and more than any other disability category, I think autism fits the bill with that, because if you're a parent or a caregiver, it's not just like, oh, I got to make sure there's experts. There's all kinds of different experts. I've got speech, I've got the behavior people, I've got maybe I'm doing some music therapy, and then I got to take the kid to school, and then I've got play group, and I got to manage insurance, and I got to figure out finances, and it's an incredible amount of stuff that the parents of children on the spectrum have to sort of navigate, and we're here for that. We're here to help you out. Do you need help with a little advocacy? Do you need help getting in touch with resources around your IEP? We do a lot of support around educational settings. How do I talk to the teacher? How do I call a meeting? How do I express that I'm not happy with the progress, or that I don't like that behavior plan? There's all kinds of stuff that we can help with. And tonight, as here at 7 o'clock East Coast time, I'm here in Richmond, Virginia. We're talking about Discrete Trial Training, DTT, which is one of the most common applications of applied behavior analysis, which is what us BCBAs do. Look at all these acronyms. I can't, for the life of me, it's hard for me to avoid the acronyms. It's nice seeing some people coming in and visiting. If you have a question, you can just type it into the bar on the side there. So let's demystify. As I said before, DTT, Discrete Trial Training, is not ABA. ABA is like Ford Motor Company, and Discrete Trial is like a Ford Fiesta. It's one of the types of Fords. So there's lots and lots of different types of interventions out there. Discrete trial, but some people say, yeah, but that's a lot, right? Like the kids sitting at the table for a long time and they're going through a lot of things. Yes. Because if you've got a kid who has severely impacted communication skills, severely impacted language skills, they're not going to learn how to do what they need to do with one or two tries. It's going to take hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of tries. You, sitting there, if you're a somewhat typical person, I don't want to say you're normal. I've never met anybody who's normal. But by 4 years old, the research has shown that the average person who's got can be exposed to around 45 million, big M, 45 million language opportunities, chances to learn something to say, and that's if your parents are pretty educated, like college level and on up. But the mid-range of that, kids are getting 30 million opportunities. 30 million opportunities to learn a word, learn a song, read a book, you name it. It's a language kind of opportunity. And for folks on the lower end of the opportunities, which are mostly kids who are in poor environments, they still get 15 million opportunities. Now, stop and think about a lot of these kids that they don't talk, they don't interact, they don't kind of go very back and forth very much. So they're starting at a deficit. So I think, a lot of our kids, by the time they're 4, they might have only had a few 100,000. It seems like a big number, right? Yeah, no, I sat down and I, talked to them or sang to them, or we worked on a word 250,000 times. It seems like a crazy number. But you're up against the norm is 30 million. So yes, discrete trial is necessary to help close that gap, because we've said that before here. Autism is uniquely sensitive to expert intervention. There are kids sitting out there right now who don't talk at all. They might be 4 years old, they might be 5 years old, 8 years old, 10 years old, not a word, and they get some good expert intervention, and they will become conversational. They will not just learn a word or two. You will be able to have a conversation with them. And that is only possible through massed instruction. You call it whatever you want. Discrete trial, massed instruction. Someone's going to have to sit down and spend a fair amount of time teaching these things discreetly. Discrete trial instruction. All right, so we are actually getting somewhat towards the end of our time. We're going to try to do these a little bit shorter. We might switch them over to YouTube. So I want to encourage you very strongly to check us out at getanswersnow.com. where you can sign up for a one-time video chat with a BCBA, or if you would like to just kind of get started and develop that relationship and dig in to all of the questions that you might have and get assigned your own clinician that you will have in your pocket 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You can definitely do that. We've got a bunch of different options there. We've got our communities, and I'm checking my notes because there are much smarter people than me that make notes for me to keep me on track. I like the interactions that we're having. People sending the little smiles and stuff like that. Actually, let me see if I can. Will it tell me? No. I thought I could click on that. It would tell me who's in there. So if you don't have any questions, we're going to end here at 7:20. Again, I do encourage you to go to getanswersnow.com. There are the communities that are always open that you can go in and check out and see if you might have the answer to your question already done. Or some of the goals that we've got, or some of the blogs, or some of the articles that we've got posted up. But primarily, the whole point of Answers Now is to connect you directly to your own clinician, whether that's just for one time or for a longer relationship. So encourage that, check that out, and we will see you next week. I forget what the next thing coming up, but we're going to continue with the Parent Support University during this time, try to help you think like a behavior analyst, put you in contact. The link that I have over in the comment section over there takes you directly to the National Professional Development Center's materials on discrete trial training. So if you want to dive in there, I recommend it. I want to thank Allison for helping set all this up, and we will talk to you guys next week.